and welcome back to our online course, Building Cost Estimation Simplified. In the previous video, we saw an exercise in taking quantities of different items of a building, and for this we took the dimensions of the room as the outer dimensions. We can find the volume of any part or any object by multiplying the length, breadth and height. And this is applicable for simple shaped objects. So if we are having a linear boundary wall, then we can straight away find the various quantities by multiplying the length, breadth and height. However, as you may have noticed in the exercise which was discussed in the previous video, when it comes to corners and junctions of a building, we need to take a more accurate approach to find out the quantities. And for this, there are two methods, and these are called the long wall, short wall method. That's the first method. And the other is called the center line method. First, we'll look at the lesson objective of today's video lesson. In this video lesson, we will familiarize ourselves with the long wall, short wall method of finding quantities. Two commonly used cost estimation methods are long wall and short wall method and center line method. For our video lesson today, we will be focusing on long wall and short wall method. So let's look at the need as to why we take this method of measurement. So when we are taking the outer dimension, when we are given the outer dimensions of a room, we're looking at the first figure on the left. So we have L0 and the breadth as B0. And if we take the outer dimensions to find the various quantities, we find that when we take the outer dimension of any quantity, there is an overlap at the corners. We have extra material calculated at the corners. For example, if we are doing the excavation, and for that we first take the length as L0 plus B0 and plus L0 plus B0, if that is the perimeter that we take, then we find that at the corners we are actually taking L0, and then B0 has, this portion of B0 has also already been considered in the L0 part. So we find that at the corners there are extra measurements being taken. Now if we have the inner dimensions of the room, and we focus on the inner dimensions to find the area, again then we are leaving out the corner dimension, the corner areas. So in order to avoid this discrepancy or this extra calculation, or in order to have a more accurate calculation, we follow the long wall, short wall method. So we'll now discuss the long wall, short wall method in detail. So we have two diagrams on the left. To get the length of the long wall or short wall, the center line lengths of the individual walls are marked and measurements are taken from this as reference. So as you can see in this, in the first figure, we know that we have, like how we have seen in the previous slides, that for the long wall, individual walls are taken. So we have this individual wall taken, and when we have, and it's taken as so that we avoid overlapping, we take them as separate walls. So here we have the short wall, and here we have the long wall. Long wall, as its name indicates, is a longer wall, and the short wall is the one that is running perpendicular to the long wall. The central line is a line that is running through the center of the wall. It's an imaginary line, and we refer to this in a plan, and in a plan which is symmetrical, and in a foundation which is symmetrical, which means that the center line of the wall, the center line of the plinth and the foundation are all the same. So which means on either sides the plan is symmetrical. So that's something to be kept in mind when we are taking the center line. So this center line is essential for making our measurements, and because all the references are through the center line. The pink dotted line that you see around, that is the center line. Now L is the length of wall out to out. So here we see the length of the wall for the long wall the length of the long wall is the length from out to out. So which means we have to measure from this end to this end. And because we are taking central line length as a reference, for this, in this case, the long wall would be from this point of the central line where it begins to this point where the central line ends in the case of the long wall. Now there is a little portion left behind, the blue color portion at the end, which is left behind because we are taking central line as the reference. And so this portion is actually half the width of the central line. So the length would be, we will take this half measurement, half breadth, and also the half breadth from this side, right? So the long wall measurement becomes, the length of the long wall out to out is equal to the center line length plus half breadth at each end, because there are two ends. So this actually becomes center line length plus breadth of that particular item. Alright, now we move on to the short wall. What is, it is indicated as S, length of short wall in to in. So we see here the short wall is taken in to in. So for this what happens is, this is the portion that we need to take, the green colored portion. And for that, again we're taking the reference points from the central line length. So the central line length is somewhere here. This is where the intersection, the central line meets. So the central line begins here and ends here. And we see that half breadth is extra on both the sides. So we have to subtract it from the central line length. So in the case of the short wall, what we do is length of short wall in to in is equal to the center line length minus half breadth at each end, which is equal to center line length minus breadth of the item, one breadth of the item. So after we get the long wall and we get the short wall measurement, we take the formula as we saw earlier, which is length into breadth into height. So the short wall into the breadth into height gives the volume, and same case is followed for the long wall. So this formula is very important, length of long wall and length of short wall. That is something that we need to keep in mind. So we have the same example that we were given earlier, 7.8 by 3.8 meter room, and this is the width of the room, and we will be taking this for our problem this time for measuring the define the measurements of various quantities based on the long wall short wall method. So this is the plan. It's a 7.8 by 3.8 meter wide room. The longer dimension depicts the length, and the 3.8 is the breadth of the room. Wall along the length of the room is considered to be the long wall. And so this is the long wall, and we see that it is taken from outer to outer. What about short wall? The wall perpendicular to the long wall is considered to be short wall. And we know that in this case, the short wall is taken inner to inner. So the exercise that we're going to do is, from the plan, elevation, sections and details given, find the following using the long wall short wall method. Earthwork in excavation and foundation, concrete in foundation, brickwork in foundation and plinth, brickwork in superstructure. So this is what we're going to find out using the long wall short wall method. We have the plan, we have the elevation, we have the section, and we also have the section of the foundation. First of all, we take the plan, showing the wall, and what we do is we draw the central line. So we know that the central line is the line passing through the center of the brick wall, the center of the wall, and because the width of the wall is 0.2 meters, so the central line will be dividing it into two equal halves, and it runs through the runs at the point 0.1 meter. So the central line is shown in semi-dotted line, and it runs around the wall, as you can see. And on either side, the measurement of the wall is same, which is 0.1 on one side and 0.1 on the other side. So we look at the central line for earthwork excavation. That's the first one that we will do. We will start the what we will do is we will start the measurement of, we'll take the items from in the order as they are constructed, so, or order of activity. So the first activity is the earthwork, and earthwork for the foundation. And we know that for the portion which has got the maximum width in the foundation is the footing, and the cement concrete footing. And so this has got the maximum dimension, and so our excavation also will be following this dimension. So the first item that we are going to measure using the central line, the long wall short wall method would be the foundation. And so we need both the section and the plan. We need the section, in fact, to find out the dimensions. So we see that from the central line, it's 0.375 on one side and 0.375 on the other side. Total is 0.75. So we draw the central line, which is, and we know that the central line is at a distance of 4, as in the dimensions of the central line are 4 meter and 8 meters. So we can see here. This is from the previous drawing. See, from the previous drawing we saw that the central line is at a distance of 8 meter in the side of the length, and it is located, the distance between the central lines for the width is 4 meters. And we have the foundation, the earthwork. The earthwork will be, excavation will be at a width of 0.75 meters. And so now we have the central line drawing of this. So first we look at the measurement sheet that we have set up to find the items, the length, breadth, and height using the long wall short wall method. The center line is the center to center length of the long wall, which is 8 meters as we saw, and center to center length of short wall is 4 meters. For excavation of foundation, we found that the half width of the foundation is 0.75 divided by 2, which is 0.375. So we see that the half width is 0.375 here and 0.375 here. So we have we first enter the item here, as in the width of the foundation is 0.75, and let's look at we'll be talking about the excavation of the foundation. So we have the width as 0.75, and let's look at the height of it, which is 1.2 meters. Let's see how we got 1.2 meters. So we see that from the ground level, the footing is at a depth of 1.2 meters. So that is the depth to which we need to excavate. So that's how we got the dimension as 1.2 meters. Before we continue further, I need to just introduce you quickly to the headings of our measurement sheet. So in the first one, we have the serial number. We have the particulars of items. In the second one, we have the number here, because if we have two long walls or two repeated items, then we need not go through it entirely again. We can just write the number here and then we can multiply it. The length column is the length of the item. I have left it blank so that we can write it as in when we do our exercise. The breadth is the breadth of the item. The width of them, mostly it will be referred to as the width of the item that we will be using. For example, we will be using the cross section of the section drawings. We will be referring to the section drawings to find out this width. So if it is the brick wall, it would be the 0.2 width of the brick wall. If it is the plinth, we look at the cross section of the plinth and see what is the cross sectional dimension. If it is the footing, cement concrete footing, we find out the width of the footing. So for this reason, we usually refer to the section drawing. The height it is also referred to as depth. It is the height of the particular item. We saw that in excavation, we refer to the section drawing to find out the depth of the excavation. In the final column, we multiply the length, the number, the length, breadth, and height to find out the quantities. Right? Now, first of all, we look at the long wall measurement for the excavation purpose. So we know that the long wall is equal to the central line length of the wall plus half width of the foundation plus half width of the foundation. We know that we saw that we could just take the one single width as one entity, as in central line plus width of the foundation. But just to make it more clearer, we have actually taken the half width separately and we are going to add it separately. So let's go back to the drawing and see how we get the long wall measurement for excavation of foundation. So here the central line, the long wall is 8 meters, right? And there is this small width that we have to consider, which we already found, which is actually this width that we see here. This is what we have here. This is, the length is actually half of the length of the footing, so which is 0.375. So there is a 0.375 left over here, and there is a 0.375 left over here. So the total length of this long wall, outer to outer, would be this 0.375 plus this 8 meters, which is center to center length, plus 0.375. So so that is our length part. Now the width, okay, let's go back and write that in our measurement sheet. Yeah, so we have 8 plus 0.375 plus 0.375, which is 8.75. We will write it as 8.75. Okay, so now we've already seen how we have found the 0.75, and which is the width of the foundation. The width of the foundation would actually be the excavation dimensions also. And then we have the depth as 1.2 meters, which is the entire ground level, the depth of the foundation from the ground level. Now the quantity is equal to, we multiply it by the number, then we multiply it by the length, then we multiply it by the breadth, then we multiply it by the height. Yeah, so we get the answer as 15.75. That is the long wall measurement. Now let's go back and see how we get the short wall measurement. For the short wall measurement, we saw that it is from inner to inner. So which means it will be from this point to this point. That is why we get the short wall. Now, because we are making the references with respect to the central line, this 4 meters is from the central line of the short wall is actually extra. So we have 4 meters here, and we have to subtract this half width of the foundation, which is this much is 0.38. This is 0.38. This is 0.38. This is 0.38. Actually 0.375, which is rounded. So we need to subtract this 0.375, this 0.375, this length, and this small little 0.375 from the central line of the short wall. So we have 4 minus 0.375 minus 0.375, which is 3.25 meters. We'll add that here, 3.25. Okay, 3.25 meters. Remember, we are following the same unit of measurement for all the items. So how do we find the total short wall quantity? Would be is equal to 2. That's the number of short wall. We know that there are 2 short walls. Then we multiply it by the length. Then we multiply it by the width of the foundation. Then we multiply it by the height, or the depth of the foundation. It is same for both long wall and short wall. So we get the answer as 5.85. Now what we do is we have to total it to find we have to find the sum of these two in order to find the total. So what we do is we go to formula and we'll do auto sum. We'll go to auto sum and put the sum. 21.6 is the meter cube, would be the total excavation of the excavation quantity. So for that, we saw how we found the long wall measurement and the short wall measurement. For the subsequent items also, we need to find the long wall measurement and short wall measurement. It keeps changing for various items. And finally, we will find the total quantity that is needed. So for this, what we will do is that because it is going to take a long time to find the actual measurement, what we will do is we will fill in this form so that we can complete this exercise in a quicker manner. So we look at the next item, which is cement, concrete and foundation. This is the same as the excavation one, because we know that the cement concrete in the footing is the largest portion of the foundation, and that is the reason why we take the same measurement for the excavation also. And so for this, we have the length of the long wall is equal to what we got in the previous one, which is same as excavation. And the length of the short wall is also what we had in the case of the length of short wall, which is equal to the value is 3.25 meters. So we have 8.75 into 0.75 into 0.15. So now here the only difference is 0.15. The rest of the dimensions are same. How do we get 0.15? That is the thickness of that the cement concrete in the foundation. Let's refer back to the section of the foundation to get an idea. So we see here that the thickness of the foundation is 0.15. So that's why we took the measurement for this as 0.15. So we have the measurement as 0.15, and then we added that value here, 8.75 and 3.25 here, and then we multiplied it by the number 2 into length into breadth into height, and 2 into length into breadth into height, and then we found the quantity, and then we totaled it and found the measurement for that particular item. So cement concrete is 2.7 meter cube. Now the next item to find out is brickwork, right? And so we're going to find the brickwork in foundation. And so for that, first we find the first footing. There are two footings, and we're going to find the measurement of the quantities in each footing. So the first brickwork is in the first footing that we are going to look at, and it has got a width of 0.4 meters and it's got a height of 0.15 meters. So first of all, we are going to draw the center line for the footing only. Now, we don't have to really draw this for every individual item. This has been made for your understanding only. So we have the center line. Remember, the center line which goes around the item is the same for all. For the brickwork also, the dimension of the center line is the same. It is 8 meters by 4 meters. So this is going to be constant throughout the items that we take. And we have the width of the footing as 0.4 meters. So which means it was equidistant from the center line, which means that it will be 0.2 meters on one side and 0.2 meters on the other side. Now, what is left for us to find out is the length of the long wall in the case of the first footing, the 0.4 meter width footing. So for that, we find that the central line is the same, which is 8 meters. And then we have, because we are taking the long wall and it is outer to outer, this small width that remains is half the width of this particular footing, which is actually 0.2 meters on this side, and it is 0.2 meters on this side. So the total long wall measurement for the 0.4 meter footing is 8.2 plus 8.2 plus 0.2, that's 0.2 plus 8 plus 0.2, which is 8.4 meters. So we go back and mention it as 8.4 meters, right? And now we go back to find the short wall measurement. The short wall measurement for the 0.4 meter footing is, again, we take it from the center line point. So the center line begins here and it ends here for the short wall, which is 4 meters, which is actually 4 meters. Again, we saw that. But since we take it as inner to inner, we subtract 1.2 meters from the top and 1.2 meters from this side. So this becomes 4 meters minus 0.2 meters minus 0.2 meters, which is 4 meters by 4 meters minus 0.2 will be 3.8 meters and minus 2 would be 3.6 meters. So the short wall measurement in the case of the footing is 3.6 meters. Let's go back and write that in our measurement sheet. So we put the value as 3.6 meters. Okay. Now move on to the next item, which is footing 2. Now the difference between footing 1 and footing 2 is the width. It's a step footing and it goes on decreasing. And in this case, it is 0.3 meters and 0.3 meters. as in the width of the footing is 0.3 meters. And let's go and see how we take the long wall, short wall measurement for footing number 2. So we are at the long wall, short wall measurement of the footing number 2, which is 0.3 meters, which is this footing that we're talking about. And we see that on either side of the center line, it is 0.15 and 0.15. And we again do the center line for the footing. The center line is constant, which is the long side is 8 meters and the short side is 4 meters, which is the case we saw in the other two, in the previous cases of concrete footing and the 0.4 meter wide footing. And because of the symmetry, there is 0.3, 0.15 on one side and 0.15 on the other side of the center line. And now we have to find the long wall of this particular, in the case of the item, brickwork, for this footing. Again, we take the center line measurement of long wall is 8 meters plus half width of that footing, which is 0.15, and the other side also we have to add 0.15, which will be 8 plus 0.15 plus 0.15, which is 8.3. Now for the short wall measurement, we have the same center line measurement, 4 meter and 4 meter, and then we subtract 1.15 from this side, which is another 0.15 from this side, which will be 4 meters by 0.3 meters minus 0.3 meters on this side. Let's go back to the measurement sheet and enter the value of the long wall and the short wall in the measurement sheet for the case, in the case of the 0.3 meter wide footing, brick footing. So for footing number 2, we are looking at column number 8, the row number 18. It's 8 meters plus 0.15 plus 0.15, which is 8.3. So we'll enter that value here, 8.3. And length of the short wall is the central line, the short wall with respect to the central line, minus half width of the footing, which is 4 minus 0.15 minus 0.15, which is 3.7 meters. So we've got the long wall, short wall measurement of the footing number 2. Now, in the similar way as we saw earlier, we can find the measurement, the value by multiplying all these value, and then we'll get the total value for the long wall, and then similarly for short wall, and the addition of both will give us the total volume of that quantity of that particular item, and that we can find as total here. Next, what we have to find is the plinth wall measurement. Okay. And for plinth wall, we have to we find the half width of the plinth, which is 0.2. We saw that it was a brick footing. The plinth wall is made of brickwork, and it's 0.2 meters. And we divide it by 2, and we get the value as 0.1, because we need that half value to add or subtract from the long wall and short wall respectively. So this value is important. It's actually easy for us to calculate that value right in the beginning. Again, length of the long wall. We'll just go back to the drawing and see how to find the length of the long wall and short wall. So what we are measuring is the this area, which is hatched in yellow, and the brickwork above it is hatched in a separate color. So we have again the center line, dotted line, which is at 8 meters by 4 meters. This is the long wall, short wall, the center line measurement of long wall and short wall. And since we add, because the half width of the wall is 0.1, we add 0.1 plus 0.1 to 8 meters for the long wall. And then we subtract 0.1 and 0.1 from the short wall. So let's go back to the measurement sheet and see how that is entered into the Excel sheet. So for the plinth wall, the measurement is 8.2 meters. We enter 8.2 here, and then we have 3.8 meters here. And the width of the width is 0.2 meters because it's a brick plinth wall. It's again 0.2 meters, and then the depth is 1.87 meters, which is again taken from the drawing. Now, this dimension from the plinth level to this level, that's how we get the depth of the brickwork in plinth. Since the brickwork continues above the superstructure, above the plinth level, the long wall, short wall measurement would be the same for this the brickwork above the superstructure as it is in the plinth level. In this case, in the case of our example, and only the height of the brick wall changes. So we saw in our previous example that the height was about 2.9. It was 2.9 meters. So what will change with respect to these two items would be just the height. So let's see how it translates into our measurement sheet. So again, the long wall would be 8.2 meters as in the previous item, and the short wall measurement would be 3.8 meters as in the previous item. The only thing that changes is the height of the brickwork. Now we move on to the next slide. So this shows the section of the central line of the section of the building, and this we have referred to in our previous slides. So we come to the end of today's video lesson. In today's video lesson, we learned about how to take quantities of various items in a building using long wall, short wall method. We found how this was more accurate than merely taking the perimeter dimensions. And we also found that, or we learned that in order to find the quantities using long wall, short wall method, we need to first locate the central line of the building, and all the references are made from the center line.